A train packed with millions, hijacked in the dead of night. No gunshots, no chaos, just silence and precision. 15 men vanished with what would now be over $70 million. No one saw them coming. No one knew where they went. But just when the world thought they'd committed the perfect crime, it all began to spiral. A train driver who wouldn't cooperate. A retired operator who couldn't drive. Seconds from disaster. And later, at a secret hideout, they made one mistake so outrageous, it sounds like fiction, but it brought the whole plan crashing down. What happened during those 30 minutes of terror? How did a child's board game expose one of history's smartest heists? And most importantly, where is the missing money even today? This is the real story of the great train robbery. The man behind the operation was Bruce Reynolds, a career criminal who had a taste for luxury, fast cars, and jazz music. But he wasn't just another thief, he was a strategist, someone who planned every detail meticulously. Reynolds didn't just gather a gang of petty criminals, he assembled a team of specialists. There was a signals expert who knew how to manipulate railway signals, a retired train driver who could handle a locomotive, and several others who brought their own unique skills. In total, there were 15 men involved in the operation, each with a specific role, each with a mission to execute. Reynolds knew that brute force wouldn't be the key to success. The plan had to be clever, silent, and perfectly executed. If even one thing went wrong, the entire operation could collapse. And so for months they studied the railway system, the schedules, and the security procedures. They knew exactly where the train would be, when it would slow down, and how to bring it to a complete stop without triggering alarms. The Royal Mail train was a fortress on wheels. It carried cash that had been collected from banks all over the country, and by the time it reached its destination in London, it would be loaded with millions of pounds. But before it could reach its final stop, the gang would make their move. At exactly 3:03 a.m., as the train was making its way through the rural countryside of Buckinghamshire, the gang sprang into action. The first step was to tamper with the railway signals. They covered the green light with a glove and rigged a fake red light in its place. When the train's driver, Jack Mills, saw the red signal, he did exactly what they expected. He brought the train to a halt, thinking there was an emergency ahead. The moment the train stopped, the gang moved in. They were dressed in dark clothing, their faces covered, and they worked quickly and efficiently. Jack Mills, confused and suspicious, tried to assess the situation, but before he could react, he was overpowered. The gang didn't use guns or unnecessary violence, but they made it clear they were in control. Once inside, the gang moved straight to their target, the high-value package carriage. This was where the cash was kept, and they knew they had only a short window to act before the alarm was raised. But there was one problem. Moving a train wasn't as simple as just pulling a lever. The gang had brought along a retired train driver, a man known as Stan Agate, to operate the locomotive. But as luck would have it, he wasn't familiar with this particular model of train. For a few tense moments, it seemed like the entire plan might collapse, but they adapted quickly. They forced Jack Mills to operate the train and take them half a mile down the track, away from any possible interference. The rest of the gang got to work. With practiced efficiency, they loaded bag after bag of cash into waiting vehicles. In total, they took 2.6 million pounds, an amount equivalent to over $70 million today. And then, just as silently as they had arrived, they vanished into the night. After the heist, the gang regrouped at a remote farmhouse they had rented months earlier. It was the perfect hideout, and they had planned to lay low there for several weeks while the police scrambled for clues. They even took precautions to avoid leaving any fingerprints, wearing gloves, and being careful about what they touched. But it was here that their greatest mistake was made. The gang, overjoyed with their success, got careless. They spent their days playing card, drinking, and celebrating. And in a move that would later haunt them, they played Monopoly using real stolen cash. Despite their best efforts to stay low, the police were already closing in. Detectives had found their hideout, thanks to a tip from a local farmer who had grown suspicious of their activities. When authorities raided the farmhouse, they found undeniable evidence: food wrappers, fingerprints, and most damning of all, the Monopoly board with real money. One by one, the members of the gang were arrested. Bruce Reynolds managed to escape and stayed on the run for 5 years before he was finally captured in 1968. Most of the gang received long prison sentences, with some being sentenced to 30 years behind bars. But even after their capture, one mystery remained: what happened to the money? To this day, a large portion of the stolen cash was never recovered. Some believe it was hidden away, spent quietly over the years, or even laundered through various means. Whatever the truth may be, the fact remains: the Great Train Robbery was one of the most most extraordinary heists in history, executed with precision, but ultimately undone by a simple mistake. The impact of the Great Train Robbery was enormous. It changed the way banks and transportation systems handled security. It showed criminals that intelligence and planning could be more effective than brute force, and most importantly, it captured the imagination of the public in a way few crimes ever have. Books, movies, and documentaries have all been made about this legendary heist. And even today, it remains one of the most talked about robberies in history. But the biggest question still lingers: if the gang had been just a little more careful, if they hadn't made that one mistake, could they have gotten away with it completely? What do you think? Was this the smartest heist in history, or was it doomed from the start? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable stories of crime, mystery, and history. And if you found this heist insane, wait till you dive into the unsolved mystery of the Zodiac Killer. That story will blow your mind. Go watch it next.